There is something profoundly mysterious about the ways of God. His plans are often concealed, his timing appears delayed, and his purposes seem shrouded in enigma. Yet, if we observe the patterns of creation in Scripture, we see a consistent theme. The greatest works of God are often preceded by silence, and his surprises emerge precisely when least expected. Consider the seed, buried beneath the soil, unseen and dormant. To the impatient eye, it may seem lifeless, but beneath the surface, a miracle is stirring. So too with God's purposes in your life. The moments when you feel forgotten, overlooked, or stagnant may be the very moments when God is preparing something extraordinary. His surprises are never arbitrary. They are perfectly timed to meet us at our deepest need and lead us into our fullest calling. But what does it mean for God to surprise us? It is not merely the granting of what we desire, nor is it confined to the resolution of our immediate struggles. God's surprises often come disguised in the ordinary: a kind word at the right moment, an unexpected opportunity, or the quiet realization that the burden you carry is shaping you into something stronger and more beautiful. These divine interventions challenge our expectations and broaden our perspective. They remind us that we serve a God who delights in turning mourning into dancing, ashes into beauty, and despair into hope. Yet to perceive these surprises, we must cultivate a heart of faith. Faith, not as blind optimism, but as a steady trust in God's goodness, even when the evidence is veiled. When you are weary and tempted to doubt, remember this: God's timeline is not your own. A delay is not a denial, and silence is not absence. The God who set the stars in motion and knit you together in the womb is not indifferent to your struggles. He is orchestrating something that, when revealed, will leave you in awe of his wisdom and love. The mystery of divine timing is a concept that has fascinated believers for generations. At its core, it challenges our human tendency to view time through a narrow lens, driven by immediate desires and finite understanding. God's timing often feels perplexing, even frustrating, because it operates on a scale that transcends our comprehension. We are creatures of the present, anchored by what we can see and measure. God, however, exists outside of time, weaving a grand tapestry where every thread is placed with precision and purpose. This disparity between divine timing and human impatience sets the stage for one of life's most profound spiritual lessons. When we speak of divine timing, we are addressing more than just the delays or waiting periods in life. We are delving into the heart of God's providential care. In the Scriptures, there are countless examples of how God's timing confounded expectations, yet achieved far greater purposes than anyone could have imagined. Take, for instance, the story of Abraham and Sarah. They were promised a son, but the fulfillment of that promise came decades later, long after they thought it was possible. To human reasoning, the delay seemed cruel or even impossible. Yet God's timing not only demonstrated his power, but also deepened their faith and magnified the significance of Isaac's birth. Such stories remind us that divine timing is rarely about immediate gratification. It is about alignment, bringing events, people, and circumstances together in such a way that they fulfill a greater, often hidden, purpose. Consider the analogy of a symphony. Each instrument must play its part at precisely the right moment to create harmony. If one enters too soon or too late, the music falters. Similarly, God's timing ensures that the instruments of our lives, our relationships, opportunities, and challenges come together in a way that produces beauty and order, even if we cannot hear the melody during moments of waiting. Another dimension of divine timing is its relationship with growth and preparation. Sometimes the very waiting we despise is what shapes us into the people we need to become. A farmer does not rush the growth of his crops because he understands that each stage, planting, watering, waiting, and harvesting, is essential. So it is with God's work in our lives. During seasons of waiting, he cultivates qualities like patience, humility, and resilience, which are often prerequisites for the blessings he intends to bestow. To receive God's gifts prematurely, without the maturity or perspective to steward them well, would ultimately diminish their impact. Divine timing also confronts us with the challenge of surrender. It is in our nature to plan, strategize, and control. When those plans fall apart or fail to materialize according to our timeline, we are tempted to question God's goodness or doubt his promises. This tension between trust and control is a crucible in which faith is refined. In surrendering to divine timing, we acknowledge a profound truth: we are not the authors of our lives. We are participants in a story far greater than our own, one in which God's purposes will prevail, even when they seem to conflict with our desires. Divine timing often serves as a reminder of our dependency on God. In a world that glorifies self-sufficiency and immediate results, waiting forces us to confront our limitations and recognize that we are not in control. This dependency is not a weakness, but a gateway to intimacy with God. When we bring our frustrations, doubts, and longings to him, we invite his presence into our lives in a deeper way. Waiting becomes less about the passage of time and more about the posture of our hearts. It is also worth noting that God's timing often involves unseen interconnections. What may appear as a delay in your life might be the very moment another piece of the puzzle is falling into place elsewhere. This interconnectedness is evident in stories like that of Joseph, whose years in slavery and prison were not wasted but served as preparation for his rise to leadership in Egypt. His elevation was not just for his benefit, but for the survival of an entire nation. Similarly, our seasons of waiting may be part of a larger plan that affects not only us, but those around us. Divine timing humbles us by reminding us of the limitations of our perspective. We see only fragments of the picture, often judging events by their immediate impact rather than their ultimate outcome. God, however, sees the end from the beginning. His timing is not arbitrary, but is rooted in his perfect knowledge and love. What seems like a delay to us is often a manifestation of his mercy or a means to a greater end that we cannot yet fathom. The ways God's surprises manifest in everyday life often defy our expectations, teaching us to recognize his grace in both the extraordinary and the mundane. We tend to look for God in grand, unmistakable acts, miracles, breakthroughs, or life-altering moments. Yet Scripture and experience repeatedly demonstrate that his most profound blessings often come through quiet, unassuming circumstances. But these moments may seem ordinary at first glance, but they are saturated with divine intentionality, offering us glimpses of his presence and purpose in our daily lives. One of the clearest ways God surprises us is through the unexpected provision of what we need at the precise moment we need it. This provision may come in various forms: financial help during a time of struggle, the encouragement of a friend when we feel alone, or a new opportunity that seems to arrive out of nowhere. Often these moments remind us that God sees us in our need, even when we feel unseen. The story of Elijah and the widow at Zarephath exemplifies this. In the midst of a famine, God provided for both Elijah and the widow in a way that neither of them could have anticipated. The seemingly small miracle of flour and oil that did not run out became a testament to God's ability to meet our needs in the most surprising and specific ways. Another way God's grace surprises us is through the unexpected resolution of problems we have carried for far too long. There are times when we labor under a burden, striving for solutions that never seem to materialize. Then, just when we are ready to give up, God intervenes in a way we could never have orchestrated ourselves. These moments remind us that His solutions often come after we have exhausted our own efforts, teaching us to depend on Him rather than our abilities. The Israelites' crossing of the Red Sea is a vivid example of this. Trapped between Pharaoh's army and the waters, their situation seemed hopeless. Yet God's intervention not only delivered them, but also demonstrated His power and faithfulness in a way that they would never forget. God's surprises also manifest in the relationships we form and the people He places in our lives. Sometimes a chance encounter, a kind word, or an unlikely friendship becomes the catalyst for profound change or healing. These interactions remind us that God works through others to accomplish His purposes. The story of Ruth and Boaz highlights this truth. What began as a humble act of kindness on Boaz's part became the foundation of a relationship that would alter the course of history, ultimately leading to the lineage of King David and later Jesus Christ. Such examples remind us that the people we meet are not random occurrences but divine appointments orchestrated with precision and care. Perhaps one of the most surprising ways God works in our lives is by using trials and hardships to bring about growth, healing, or new opportunities. In the moment, difficulties can feel like barriers to God's blessings, but often they are the very means by which He refines us and prepares us for something greater. Consider the life of Joseph, whose betrayal by his brothers, enslavement, and imprisonment seemed like a series of unfortunate events. Yet, each of these trials played a crucial role in positioning him to save countless lives during a famine. God's ability to bring good out of pain is one of the most unexpected and awe-inspiring ways He works in our lives. Sometimes, God's surprises come in the form of a new perspective. We may pray for a specific outcome, believing it is what we need, only to find that God answers our prayers in a completely different way. In those moments, He challenges us to see our circumstances through His eyes, revealing that His plans are not only better than ours, but also rooted in a deeper understanding of what will truly fulfill us. The Apostle Paul's experience with the thorn in the flesh is a striking example. Paul prayed for its removal, but God's response was unexpected. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Rather than removing the thorn, God used it to demonstrate His strength and sufficiency in Paul's life. To these individual experiences, God's surprises often reveal themselves in the long arc of our lives. What may seem like a detour or delay in one season can later be seen as a crucial step toward a greater purpose. These moments of clarity, when we look back and see how God's hand was guiding us all along, are among the most humbling and awe-inspiring reminders of His grace. They teach us that even when we cannot see it, God is always at work, aligning circumstances and events in ways that are far beyond our understanding. The element of surprise itself is a reminder of God's nature. He is not limited by our expectations or confined to our plans. His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts higher than our thoughts. This unpredictability is not a cause for fear, but a source of hope, for it means that God's plans for us are often far greater than we could have imagined. By learning to recognize His grace in the small, everyday moments as well as the extraordinary ones, we open ourselves to a deeper awareness of His presence and a greater capacity to receive His blessings. Faith as the path to perceiving divine surprises is a journey that requires trust, patience, and an open heart. Faith is not merely a belief in God's existence. It is an active posture of reliance on His character, promises, and timing. When life presents challenges or moments of uncertainty, it is often our faith that positions us to recognize and receive the unexpected blessings God has prepared. Without faith, even the most profound interventions of God can go unnoticed or be misunderstood. Faith is not just the key to understanding God's surprises, it is the lens through which we see His hand at work in our lives. At its core, faith begins with trust. To trust God means to believe that His plans are good, even when circumstances seem to suggest otherwise. This trust is not rooted in evidence we can always see, but in the conviction that God's character is unchanging. When we read in Scripture that all things work together for good to those who love God, Romans 8:28, we are reminded that faith involves holding on to this promise, especially in moments when life feels uncertain. Faith teaches us to wait expectantly, knowing that God's surprises are often revealed in His perfect time. This waiting is not passive, it is an active anticipation of His goodness, much like a child waiting for a gift from a loving parent. Patience is another essential element of faith. While trust allows us to believe in God's goodness, patience enables us to endure the waiting process without losing hope. Many of God's surprises come after seasons of waiting, often when we feel least prepared or most discouraged. Abraham's faith in God's promise of a son required years of patient endurance, even when all evidence seemed to contradict it. Similarly, our ability to perceive God's surprises depends on our willingness to wait with faith, resisting the temptation to take matters into our own hands. Impatience can cloud our vision, causing us to miss the subtle ways God is at work behind the scenes. Faith also requires a certain openness of heart, a willingness to let go of preconceived notions about how God should act. Often we expect God to work in specific ways or to answer our prayers according to our desires. However, divine surprises rarely conform to human expectations. God's blessings often come in unexpected forms, challenging us to broaden our understanding of His plans. When Jesus came as the Messiah, many failed to recognize Him because He did not fit their expectations of a conquering king. Instead, He arrived as a humble servant, surprising those who were open enough to see the truth. Faith involves surrendering our expectations and allowing God to surprise us in ways that surpass our limited understanding. Another aspect of faith is resilience in the face of doubt. Doubt is a natural part of the human experience, especially when we face prolonged hardships or unanswered prayers. However, faith does not mean the absence of doubt, it means choosing to trust God even when doubt arises. This resilience positions us to recognize God's surprises as it keeps our hearts open to His work even in difficult seasons. The story of Thomas, one of Jesus' disciples, is a poignant example. Despite his doubts about the resurrection, Jesus met Thomas where he was, revealing Himself in a way that transformed Thomas's faith. In the same way, God meets us in our moments of doubt, often surprising us with His grace and presence when we least expect it. Faith also equips us to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. God's surprises are not always grand or miraculous, they often come through everyday moments and encounters. Without faith, we may overlook these subtle expressions of His love and provision. Faith sharpens our spiritual senses, allowing us to discern His presence in the small blessings of life, a sunrise, a kind gesture, or an unexpected opportunity. The ability to perceive these moments as gifts from God transforms our perspective, reminding us that He is intimately involved in every aspect of our lives. Gratitude is another dimension of faith that helps us perceive divine surprises. When we cultivate a heart of gratitude, we train ourselves to look for God's goodness in every situation. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have, creating an awareness of God's ongoing work in our lives. This awareness opens the door to recognizing the unexpected ways He blesses us. The leper who returned to thank Jesus after being healed experienced not just physical restoration, but a deeper connection with Christ. His faith, expressed through gratitude, allowed him to fully embrace the surprise of God's grace. Faith prepares us to respond to God's surprises with humility and obedience. When God intervenes in unexpected ways, it often requires us to step out of our comfort zones or to act in ways that align with His plans. Mary's response to the angel's announcement that she would bear the Messiah is a powerful example of this. Her faith enabled her to accept a surprise that completely upended her life, trusting that God's plan was far greater than her own. Faith not only allows us to perceive God's surprises, but also empowers us to embrace them wholeheartedly.